About 5 years ago, my now estranged daughter, ED, cheated on her boyfriend, Brad, and got together with a guy, Ken. He quickly started isolating her from family and my husband and I from her kids. Brad had moved back to his home state devastated after the breakup. I discussed red flags her. I let her know we are here for her and concerned. Her and Ken suddenly took off and moved to another state. For 5 months, my husband and I worried about her and the kids as we had n//c at all with them. One day CPS showed up at our door with the oldest child. He was obviously injured from abuse that was reported by the school. We had no idea they had moved back to the area. We agreed to take them in. The next 20 months were traumatic, complicated, emotional, and difficult for everyone. Through it we re-established a relationship with the older child's dad, Dan. Daughter failed to comply with her plan and remained with Ken. Dan worked hard to get custody of his child and he gave ED scheduled weekly phone calls. She called oldest child 2x nothing since. We agreed to permanent custody of youngest. In the process, I put aside the hurt ED caused and agreed to scheduled weekly phone calls and supervised visits in person when schedules allowed. Legally, any or no contact is at my sole discretion. Ken was not allowed to interfere //attend. ED quit calling //scheduling visits after 3 months. I reset the call schedule to 1 month. No calls. 6 months later she calls and wanted me to drop everything for a visit the following day. I couldn't because I had to go back to work. Calls stopped again. She left Ken, has a new BF. I know nothing else about her life / whereabouts. She started calling again about a year ago and I let her know that if she was consistent with her monthly scheduled calls, we would move towards weekly calls again. She called 2 months in a row, skipped a couple months, then called 2 more months in a row. Last one happened to be night before child's birthday. She asked him what he wanted for his birthday. He said a call from her. The next day, as he blew out candles, he said, "My mom is gonna call now." He had the biggest smile on his face. Call never came. He refused my offer to call her. We survived an emotional meltdown. Next month, no call, just a text after with a lame timing excuse as to why and sorry about the birthday call, she didn't feel well. Following month, I get a text that ED feels ill again, won't be calling. I am beyond frustrated at this point. I have looked past her refusal to rebuild a relationship with us, but when it comes to the kids my heart aches for them. Hey race where I might be the I responded, parents do not get sick time. We all had COVID recently, including me, and I still took care of the children. If you do not have any time for him once a month, I don't want my time wasted with your excuses. Of course, calls stopped again. I got my son a 7K motorcycle for his 18th birthday this past June. My son is obsessed with automobile and loves motorcycles. In his room he has plenty of models and posters of motorcycles of all types. His bio dad passed away when he was just 12, now I'm married to my current husband and he has kids of his own. My husband has always been against my son's interest in motorcycles. He thinks I'm encouraging him to be reckless, distracting him from school and by extension his future, and spoiling him and blowing away money by spending 7K on a motorcycle. This caused some tension between him and my son, so I told him to stop complaining about it. Around 2 weeks ago, my son's motorcycle went missing. We opened a police report but nothing came out of it. It just disappeared. My husband had a smirk on his face the entire time, just walking around saying, "I told you so. You just wasted your money." This was unbearable to hear, to be quite honest. My mother-in-law visited few days ago. She was talking about the other house my husband owns and mentioned seeing a motorcycle. One that's similar to the one that we lost in my husband's carriage while she was cleaning it. She goes to clean that house weekly even though it's empty. My husband plans on giving it to his kids as inheritance. I was puzzled. I asked if she was certain, but she showed me a photo she took of it which confirmed that it was indeed my son's motorcycle. I immediately rushed to call my husband and confront him about it. He admitted that he took and hid the motorcycle in his garage as a last resort after me and his stepson kept brushing him and his thoughts off about the 7K being spent on something unnecessary and that could cause issues. I blew up at him demanding he return it. He refused and told me he had been considering selling it and giving the money back to me so I could use it wisely this time. I told him I was serious and that I'd call the police. He literally said, "This is a family matter and cops can't do shit about it." I had enough. I called the cops soon as I ended the call with him. The motorcycle was found and returned. But my husband had to be taken in since there was an open file about the motorcycles going missing. He was let go eventually, but he was livid with me. He came home yelling about how awful what I did was and how crazy my behavior was. I refused to engage in the argument, but he told his entire family about it and they judged me for calling the police on my own husband, even though I already asked him to return it. He said he was just looking out for my son and that one day we'll realize that he was right, but only when it's too late. My son isn't speaking to me or my husband. I feel horrible about the whole situation and am starting to think I handled this the wrong way. I am a 35 years old female, a musician, playing gigs and at an orchestra as a violinist. Rehearsals just resumed, so orchestra is my main source of income ATM. My sister, she's 26, is a social worker, working 3 days a week, so minimal income, but she adores her job. I live in a small 2-bedroom apartment, both rooms around 9-10 square meters. Using the second room as a practice room / storage for my instruments, 3 violins, 2 guitars, a digital piano, a small drum kit, and other stuff. 4 months ago my sister broke up with her BF and I offered her my spare room, temporarily. I moved most of my stuff to the living room so I could fit a small bed in there. Sis moved in, but she asked me to move more stuff to the living room. I moved pretty much everything sans the piano, to the point where the living room became uninhabitable. Then she started complaining about my violin playing, saying it gave her headaches. I told her I couldn't stop the daily practice without risking my only steady income. The arguments got worse. She told me to play only when she wasn't home, but with her work schedule I couldn't afford that. I tried switching to the electric violin, but even that can be pretty loud, so it didn't help. Several times I reminded her this was only a temporary arrangement, but she didn't seem to hear me. 2 weeks ago I arrived home to finding my piano in the bathroom, near water and humidity, because my sis needed the space for her new double bed. When I told her she can't SRSLY expect me to store my piano there, she said, "Yeah, you will just have to sell it, I guess." I got so mad I told her she has 7 days to leave, but she didn't take me seriously. For a week I only talked to her to remind her how much time she has left, but she always laughed it off, told me to stop acting like a crazy person. When the deadline came I boxed up all her stuff while she was at work, booked an Airbnb bedsit close by and drove her stuff there. She was livid but couldn't do anything but take her new keys and stay there. The following week she kept calling me with an increasingly apologetic tone, saying she shouldn't have moved my piano or bought a bed. She promised she would put more effort into finding a new place. And by the end of the week I considered most of our issues at least addressed, so I drove to help her move back. But when I was carrying the first box down, she went, "I do hope you will at least stop with the violin this time." I absolutely refused to take more of that ****ing violin. I dropped the box, wished her good luck and left. Now, 2 days later, on one hand it feels like a huge overreaction to leave my own sister literally homeless because of an argument about the violin. I know she cannot afford to stay there, but on the other hand I have no plans to allow her back here, because I feel she would just continue crossing boundaries and never leave. I am a 51 years old male, and I have 3 children, 1 girl, 1 boy, and 1 child is gender neutral. My son Eric is the oldest, Eva is the middle child, and Charlie is my youngest. I'm still very new to the whole LGBTQ thing, so please correct me if I say something wrong. Now sadly when the children were all young their mother / my wife passed away in a car accident and I've been raising them by myself. Ever since as I've chosen to never remarry since my wife was / is the love of my life. I'll say I'm definitely not a perfect father, but I've done the best I could to raise my children. Now Eva has always been a bit more wild than her other siblings even before her mother's passing. I've tried everything ranging from having sit-down talks with her to putting her in therapy as well as taking parenting classes and reading books to see what I could possibly do to help. Therapy did seem to help a little bit but decided to stop soon after she turned 18. Now let me tell you the story as to why I'm here now. My daughter Eva still lives with me and Charlie as she goes to school. and has definitely been home more due to the pandemic, but has started to go out more now that they are letting up on some of the regulations. Now I was out getting dinner with an old high school buddy of mine, when I get a panicked call from my son who had been at my house hanging out with his siblings. To summarize what he told me, he got into an argument with Eva and Charlie sided with him. Eva became very volatile and even called Charlie a slur, which is a big hell no for me. So I headed home and tried to calm everything down. I told Eva I didn't care about what they had been arguing about, and that she wasn't allowed to disrespect Charlie or Eric like that. Me and Eva ended up now being the ones to start arguing, but I soon shut it down when I realized it wasn't gonna help. I forced her to apologize and took away her car privileges until she could learn to respect her siblings, and I thought it was the end of that. Well, the next morning after work I ended up coming home and finding scraps of papers all over. At first I didn't get it, but then soon found out that she cut up about half a dozen letters her mother had written me when I was much younger. I was livid. I know it was her because I have a couple cameras in my house. I just walked into her room and told her to get out. She was smug and rolled her eyes, but then I yelled, "Get the out of my house," and she realized I was serious. She was crying and screaming, but I had felt sorta numb at that point, and she left with a friend of hers. But now I feel like I was being too harsh, but I wanna stand my ground. She did know about the cameras, but they're really just there for my dog.